This is Kyle Hyman, and as always, we are joined by Cindy Black for Theology by Thursday. Thanks for being here, Cindy.
Morning.
Last time you were here, we were talking about, and Andrew, she's on mic too. But last time you were here, we were talking to kids about their bodies, talking about their private parts, and how to have those conversations. One, to start teaching them about their bodies and theology of the body and things, but also to kind of protect them in cases where their private parts should not be seen and they should not be seeing private parts. I know one of the topics we kind of left a little open-ended, we ran out of time.
Yeah, you were asking me how often we should have that conversation with our children. Like, we don't want to do it too much to kind of, plant these weird seeds, but we also want to make sure we're doing it often enough. And one thing I didn't say was, if we tell our children and make it clear that if they come across inappropriate pictures on the internet, that actually happened to me just last week, and I could not get it off of my phone, and it just kept asking me questions about what woman I wanted to meet.
Oh, wow.
And it asked me my age. Are you 18 or over? And I was clicking no, thinking it would take it away, and it didn't.
Yeah.
So if we tell our kids that one of our rules, our family rules, are that if they see inappropriate things, on the internet or in person, if somebody asks to see private parts or things like that, that they need to tell us right away. So then we don't have to keep asking them, like, have you seen inappropriate things on the internet?
Right.
Just let them know that as soon as they see that, they need to come get us and let us know. And explain that images, because the government recognizes that those things are harmful, that there's laws against it, and we need to figure out how to get it off and erase it and things like that.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good point to help them to understand that they're cooperating with making sure that we're a good household and things like that. So anyway.
Yeah, if you missed that, definitely go back and listen to that, especially if you have kids or grandkids, an important topic, and that's available at kylehyman.com, also on our YouTube channel, things like that. Another thing, though, that kind of recent events, and we were talking with Mary Glowowski earlier with the sex abuse scandal, one of the issues that comes up is celibacy within the priesthood. And I want to talk to you a little bit about that. We've talked in the past about celibacy for the kingdom and why it is a good that we have celibacy within the church. Can you give us a reminder on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I think it's important that we start with the notion of chastity. Not all of us are called to celibacy, but every human person is called to chastity. And it's not a matter of you're either chaste or not chaste. It's a continuum where we're constantly trying to learn to be more and more chaste, which basically is the successful integration of sexuality within the person. And through the inner unity in our body and spiritual being. So, theology of the body, each time we talk about it, we talk about how we're bodily and spiritual beings, and those things are integrated. They're not separate, and that we can't treat them as separate. Then we're disintegrated or not living the life that God created us to live. And that definition actually is found from the Catechism 2337. So the successful integration of sexuality within the person. We're all called to live that. But then what that looks like is different within different vocations. And in the Roman Rite, our priests are called to celibacy. Religious brothers and sisters are called to celibacy because they choose to be espoused to the church and to Christ uniquely. So then, rather than giving themselves bodily to one person, their spouse, they offer that gift for the sake of the church. They offer it to Christ. So it's not a repression. It's a different way to offer themselves as self-gift. And as Mary pointed out, we need to look at a lot of issues that are leading to this. It doesn't do any good to say other denominations have abuse or other professions have abuse. But what it is good to look at And I'm blessed to have Father Dan Scheidt as my pastor. And he pointed out that isn't healthy, except for when we look at what kind of environment leads our priests, our clerics to act on and engage in unchastity. And in this case, criminal unchastity. So looking at it, a lot of posts on social media, articles, the media is saying somehow that if we lift the discipline of celibacy from the priesthood, that's going to help alleviate these scandals.
Right.
The important thing for all Catholics to be able to speak about is that celibacy does not cause pedophilia.
Right.
That the abuse that is happening is abuse. It's not about a consensual sexual relationship between two adults. That this isn't just, I don't have a wife to express my sexuality with, so I'm going to abuse children.
Right.
That is, there's a pathology to that. Looking at where abuse typically takes place, if that were the case, 30% of all abuse would not take place within families. So I think it's important for us to not look at what won't help the issue so that we can look at the larger context and things that do foster this. Now, Father Dan did a talk last night at our parish, just speaking from his pastor's heart on how can we be a parish that looks for healthy ways to live each of our vocations. And he started with a story of Sir Alec Guinness, who was a British actor who played Father Brown in 1954.
Okay.
And he was dressed in his clerics from his role, or not his clerics, but he was in costume.
Right.
And he left the set and he was walking, and a little boy walked up to him and saw, his clerics and grabbed his hand and walked with him with this love and trust. He ended up becoming Catholic, and he reflected on, this is a quote from him, "I reflected that a church which could inspire such confidence in a child, making its priest, even when unknown, so easily approachable, could not be as scheming or as creepy as so often made out. I began to shake off my long-taught, long-absorbed prejudices." So something like how that boy viewed a priest inspired him to become Catholic, because it was so contrary to kind of the weirdness that he had always, our world can paint about celibacy.
Yeah.
They make it seem like it's freakish or something instead of this beautiful self-gift. Then he walked us through movies that many of us my age have seen, the airplane movies.
Okay.
And he showed a scene in the cockpit where the pilot tries to groom a young boy who came to kind of see the cockpit and starts asking him questions about like seeing a man naked. And two other adults are in the scene, the flight attendant and the co-pilot. And both of them kind of try to redirect what's going on between the pilot and this boy without success. The pilot basically then chastises them. And it's this whole joke, like it's meant to be
comedy.
Funny.
Right.
And so here is this boy being groomed, and then the flight attendant tries to get him to go back to the boy back to his seat. But when he says he wants to stay and the pilot reprimands her, she leaves because we don't want to be part of, like, we know it's awful. Like she knew inherently that it was awful. And then in Airplane 2, it shows a priest sitting as a passenger, and he's looking at a magazine called Altar Boy like it's pornography. And he points to when those movies came out and where were the outcries against these things? The media didn't jump all over Airplane and say, how can you glamorize or make a joke out of an adult grooming a boy,
Right.
and then two adults who knew about it and did nothing. Like,
Yeah.
so we have a responsibility to, number one, to hold up celibacy for what it is, a beautiful gift of self for those people who live it out, who strive to live it out faithfully. I mean, the reality of it is, out of all the priests, 96% are not abusers.
Right.
96% of priests are living out their celibacy and striving to be more and more chaste with each passing day. So we as a culture, we as the laity need to build that up and affirm that. And we need to really start calling out this culture that is permissive and sends messages contrary to what we know about the truth of the human person. And we also have to recognize that love, and even sexual love, looks different at different stages of our lives. That, priests are called to celibacy, which is a lifelong offering of self by not engaging in bodily sexuality. But even in like a married couple, the sex life of a married couple, the love expressed may look differently. A newlywed couple who doesn't have doesn't have children and has more free time, likely engage in the bodily act more frequently than somebody who has several children and a lot of responsibilities. They're running children. And then the couple, either from age or illness, are less able to engage, to express their love sexually. Also, women and men who are living the single life, at the time they are called to abstinence. So, yeah. So there's a lot within this.
Yeah. You can't cure pedophilia with marriage.
Right.
Also. All right. Well, thank you, Cindy, for joining us again for Theology Thursday. Appreciate it. And we also want to thank Notre Dame Federal Credit Union for underwriting this show and for their support. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode of The Kyle Hyman Show. Until then, remember to leave room for the Holy Spirit.